So Greg and I have prepared a deck for today that we're going to walk through, and it's basically a couple of components, as we talked about. It's structuring your brand so that you can tell stories to your various audiences, whether they are internal audiences or external audiences. So there are certain pillars of brand development that kind of need to be in place so that you can go out and kind of unleash your stories. And then, of course, how will you tactically deploy them is what the content strategy is kind of all about. So that's sort of the 30,000 foot view. If that makes any sense. Just talked about what the table of contents are. So Fulton Mecklenburg is a design thinking digital agency. We like to say we're a design thinking digital agency with top-notch creative. What we've done is we've sort of merged experience design with digital and social capabilities, as well as top-notch creative. So that's sort of us in a nutshell. I'm going to show a short video that does the heavy lifting about us, and then we're going to dive right in. Sorry about that. Yeah, so my partner Greg and I, right, we were talking about how hip hop got started so many years ago. We were talking about Kool Herc, DJ Hollywood, and Grandmaster Flash, how they had to figure this stuff out on the fly. They had to get the records, they had to get the mixer, the amp, the speakers, the long extension cord from the street lamp all the way to their rig, and then power it all together, mash it up, and then move the crowd. And we were really inspired by that history, and we were like, wow, what if we could take disparate pieces from here and from there and from here and bring them all together and create something hot and new that was meaningful, that would actually add value, right? And so when we were thinking about our fledgling agency that we're in the process of launching, Fulton Mecklenburg, we thought, yeah, we can do the same thing. We can take these seemingly disparate pieces, bring them together, mash them up, and make something new and hot that's really gonna move the crowd. So we thought, user-centered experience design, crazy. We thought digital and social capabilities that are really meaningful, that really kind of, follow your customers or your users throughout the journey, right? We thought about, quick turn, compelling content, and of course, killer creative, right? All of it sort of within this agile sort of methodology framework, which hadn't been done before. And so when we mashed all that up together, we came up with Fulton Mecklenburg, right? Which is the new agency model. It's I guess you'd call it a design thinking digital agency with indie film video production bones and agile DNA. And that's really Fulton Mecklenburg. It's a new agency model because the old one isn't working. Having been in the agency world over 20 years, you kind of see that, that 20th century approach to helping brands connect with consumers and users is just kind of broken. And so we thought we'd bring together all those disparate pieces the same way Kool Herc, DJ Hollywood, and Grandmaster Flash did so many years ago, right? And so that's Fulton Mecklenburg. Hit us up on social, and we can help you move the crowd. Fulton Mecklenburg. All right. So that's our little about us video. And so we think a pretty good example of brand storytelling, and also letting a medium do the heavy lifting. So we connected our story to some very well-known history, American pop culture history on how hip hop got started. And so we used a very well-known piece of history to do the heavy lifting to leverage our story. So I wanted to show that for two reasons. One, to tell you about us as opposed to just telling you about us. Showing you is a little more compelling, which is when I was at the Alpha Labs a couple of weeks ago and I saw a lot of the pitches. I thought some of these pitches probably could have been helped with some multimedia tools that could have done some of the heavy lifting for some of the entrepreneurs. They had very compelling stories, but there were just a lot of presentation of facts. And then after a while, we tend to become numbed out. The brain just numbs out over the overabundance of fact presentation, features, and benefits. And so wanted to show that video for two reasons. One, to have multimedia do some of the heavy lifting, and then two, to tell you about us. Over the years, Greg and I have worked with a lot of great clients, a lot of top Fortune 500 clients, a lot of great startups. We both have extensive agency backgrounds. We met at a top 3 agency at Moxie in Atlanta, where Greg was heading up creative for the Verizon brand, and I was heading up digital strategy. and digital experience for the Verizon brand. And it was there that we kind of figured out that we might work together in the future. And so we reconnected. But under our Fulton Mecklenburg banner, we've also had the opportunity to work with some top brands and some great startups, as you can see on the right hand of your screen here. We've provided video content and social media campaigns, and we've built apps and responsive websites and developed integrated rich media digital campaigns for these brands as well. So there's a little bit of proof in the pudding there. Wanted to show you that before we started really kind of jumping into today's topic.
Well, I'll add one thing to that as well too. And in addition to our experience and training and passion for all things advertising and marketing, we both have a love for hip hop music. So it's not like we just randomly chose to use that motif to tell our brand story. It's in our DNA.
Mm. Very good point. Yeah, we kind of grew up on it, and so we thought we'd express some of that through our agency motif. So brand storytelling. We're going to shift a little bit. Greg's going to do most of the heavy lifting here and walk us through why storytelling. Can you guys see these slides?
Cool. So the great poet and playwright, Muriel Rukeyser, said the universe is made of stories and not atoms. I mean, it is true. And you think about the things that we think we do in our everyday lives, stories play a really big part of that. And, it's real interesting for me too, because stories is basically how I personally got into advertising. I mean, I was a theater major in college, and I studied playwriting first and wrote plays for years, and then got into television and wrote for television. And there was when I was working in Los Angeles, there was a writer's strike. And instead of sitting on my couch all day, I, started freelancing at a advertising agency. So the reason why I was able to kind of hit the ground running in advertising was my ability to tell stories. I could present work, I could bring in characters into a narrative and set that up into the way to present clients and to tell a brand story. So it was just a natural fit. So why storytelling? It's very strong that, it's the cornerstone of the human experience. It's through stories that we truly construct our world. And, and stories take the advantage of a human cognition. They build connections and context around facts in order to make them more memorable. And it's scientifically proven that stories get a person's attention. In fact, stories can stimulate the neurochemicals and dopamine and oxytocin.
I want to dive in there. And of course, dopamine and oxytocin are the two neurochemicals that drive all human accomplishment. Dopamine from an adrenaline release and oxytocin from an emotional connection. So dopamine drives us to take action, while oxytocin creates that emotional connection. So stories stimulate both of these neurochemicals to have folks take action through dopamine, and also to create an emotional connection through oxytocin. So it's scientifically proven that storytelling does that. It's the way our human cognition actually works.
And character-driven stories even more do consistently cause that oxytocin release, right? And and the studies have proven too as well that a lot of fundraising and a lot of fundraising organizations use stories in order to get that empathy, in order to get people to respond and to react. And the flow of a story helps us spot casual connections. I mean, a lot of times we can place ourselves in a story. We can, relate to characters in a story, and getting to the root cause of an issue can be tricky. But our brains are definitely hardwired to find the connections between events.
So storytelling for startups are important for driving action for VC, and also creating empathy with VC, and also driving action for subscribers and users, and creating that emotional connection that keeps folks in your funnel.
So, I mean, what is brand storytelling? I mean, it's basically using a narrative to connect your brand to customers with a focus on linking what you stand for to the values you share with your customers. I mean, if you look at the examples to the right, it's like, Nike stands for athletic excellence, not sneakers or sports equipment. Yes, they sell sneakers and sports equipment, but it's all about athletic excellence. I mean, look at their tagline, just do it, right? And, and when they started speaking that language to athletes, their shoe sales and their, gear sales went through the roof. the same with Disney. I mean, Disney stands for family happiness. It's, you know, it's not just theme parks and movies. It's, you know, and look at their tagline too, and it's be our guest, right? Their story that they're telling is like, when you are with us, you are our guest, and they live that through and through. Now, an example of an organization that probably discovered their brand storytelling or what their brand message was a little late was Kodak. For years, Kodak thought that they were in the, you know, film processing business. They thought for, you know, for the longest that they were all about, you know, the processing and everything. But then later on, someone came to realize that they are in the memories capturing business.
Yeah,
but
Blockbuster's probably another example, Greg. Blockbuster as well, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes. They, you know, and it's all part of your survival is based on how well you understand what your brand story is and how you tell your brand story and how succinctly you tell it. Now, you know, but let's look a little deeper into that, you know, that the main character in your brand story is not you, it's your customer. So a lot of commercials that we really love and we really get into, it's because the brand or the agency or whoever's telling the story has successfully created a character as to represent the customer who is at the center of the story, is the hero of the story. And your brand becomes a sidekick that's as a part of the story, as opposed to, you know, I think where, you know, like David was talking about earlier about, you know, brands or businesses or organizations getting so focused on their features and benefits and their speeds and feeds that they forget to present this there or tell it the story in a way that will bring people in. In this case, your brand would not necessarily, your brand is not the hero in this, you know, it's the customer.
And that should run, and that concept runs succinctly with human-centered user experience, right? So brand storytelling is on a parallel path with the way you are developing products based upon being empathetic and user-centered and human-centered in the way you're trying to develop your experiences through your product. So it's a parallel path there. If you're using human-centered experience design through design thinking, brand storytelling really kind of goes hand in hand with that. And a lot of startups and a lot of tech companies, they sort of dropped a baton when it comes to the communications design piece, which is the brand storytelling, and the content strategy piece, which goes hand in hand with human-centered design. Just want to add that, Greg.
Yeah, and also too, it's that, you know, the customer is in control. You know, one of the things that David and I worked on together when we were at Verizon was we worked on their big, you know, holiday campaign. And, you know, and traditionally what Verizon would do is that they would take just a straight, you know, waterfall approach. They would just look at it and say, hey, here's the big brand idea. We're going to do a TV spot. We're going to push it down to, you know, to the next level. Then we're going to do a digital campaign, and everything, just one thing kind of followed right after another. Well, the way we looked at it as a whole was that people were going to come into it at different times in different places. It's not just one linear, one thing falls after the next. Because the customer is in control, the customer will jump in your story at any time and any place, you know, and, you know, because now buying is now social, it's self-directed, it's trust-based and transparent. And you have to understand your story because people are going to jump in at any different times. And it's a conversation as well. You know, the story now, it's like, you know, the brand puts out the story, or, you know, it goes out first, and then you respond to it. Then the audience kind of comes in and adds something to it. It's not just set it and forget it. So, and ideally you can encapsulate what you stand for in just a few words, like the example I kind of started the slide off with.
Just do
Disney,
it.
be our guest. Nike, just do it. I mean, we can go on for days in terms of brands who really nail that story in terms of being able to get it in 3 words. And you know, from a copywriter standpoint, one of the things that I generally like to do is if I have to sit down and you know, and come up with a campaign, I'll look at what are those 3 or 4 words that would create like a tagline that would tell the story. Now, granted, not every brand will use a tagline, but if you can still tell that story in just a few words, then it will fuel everything that you do. It doesn't matter if you're doing a 30-second TV spot or if you're doing, you know, a flyer that you're going to post on, you know, telephone poles, or if you're social media. If you have that brand story and if you have that nailed, then it's going to be easy for you to get out into the universe. And one thing that we've noticed too, that when working with smaller clients too, a lot of times is that, they won't have that. They won't understand that. And also too, they'll have a lot of people coming in and out on their business, helping them out where they can and pulling a lot of different things. That's when it's very important to have a very succinct brand story.
Yeah, the message kind of gets fragmented sometimes,
Yeah.
and can become diluted, and then you're pulled in a lot of directions. And while you may know the features and benefits of your product, you want to make sure that there is a market product fit there as well. So,
yeah.
Next slide, Greg.
Yep. So let's dive a little bit into the narrative elements of storytelling. And by narrative, we mean the things that kind of make a story, what makes a really good story. And a really good story includes character, setting, conflict, rising action, climax, and denouement. And, so I'm going to add one other thing to that as well. It's basically, it's called cliffhangers. And, as someone who is, I mentioned earlier, who worked in as a card carrying member of the Writers Guild of America and told a lot of stories, written a lot of scripts and screenplays, I always knew about cliffhangers, the power of cliffhangers. But then most recently, I read a book called Irresistible by Adam Alter, and he talks about how cliffhangers are used in like in gaming and used in just everyday, like Netflix uses cliffhangers a lot in terms of being able to get you to binge watch. And he talked a lot about the podcast Serial. I don't know if you guys remember that from a few years ago, but one of the things that really made Serial such a phenomenon was the author, the lady who was putting it up from NPR, Sarah Kerning, I believe was her name. She created cliffhangers in every episode. She didn't solve some episodes she would say, I think I know whether he's innocent or guilty. And then some episodes she said, well, I just don't know. I haven't figured it out. And then you would come back for the next episode. So there are a lot of different ways that cliffhangers are built into story elements to keep you on the hook, keep you coming back for more. And when you leverage these elements, it allows your audience to easily follow along with the story and remember it. So let's talk a little bit about brand tone of voice. I mean, what exactly is it? I mean, the brand describes your company's personality. It's consistent and it's unchanging. Like I was saying earlier about, like, if let's say if you have a limited budget and you have to kind of, bring in people on a project basis to help tell your story, well, if you have that brand voice set up, and one of the things that we've talked about our clients is helping them kind of set up their brand guidelines. And part of that would be their brand tone of voice, so that, it remains consistent and it's not just, kind of reinvented with every piece of marketing material that goes out. And also the emotional inflection applied to your voice, it adjusts to what's suitable for a particular message. Now, look at this MailChimp example here. I mean, MailChimp could have easily put up a 404 page, right? Sorry, the page you're looking for is not there. But they did it in the MailChimp style, and basically saying it seems to be the page that you're looking for disappeared. We've recorded the vanishing act, and our team of chip magicians will find the missing link. I mean, that's brilliant. That's right on time with their brand, and it's still doing what it's supposed to do, which is, hey, we see that there's a problem here. The page you're looking for is not there. So when the brand voice,
go ahead, Greg.
When the brand voice authentically embodies its values with the right tone, the audience will emotionally connect with it individually and collectively. Go ahead, David. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say MailChimp, brilliant. And also using that real estate to continue to drive that relationship, as opposed to just putting a 404 page up.
Yes.
They use that real estate, which we call white space, to continue to drive brand home, tone, and voice, which again continues to deepen that relationship and that brand connection, which is really kind of what you have in today's highly cluttered space. You want to continue to, without being a nuisance, continue to drive that relationship.
And this MailChimp example is a really good example, because this is a coordinated effort, right? Because typically, in the web development process, generally when you get to the 404 pages, it's usually the developers are just maybe taking the masthead that's already set up by the designers, or and they're just kind of filling in something. But for them to have this unique page right here, the design team and the creative team had to be involved early on.
Mm.
So it's a coordinated effort in terms of being able to continue to tell your brand voice in almost every touch point that's available. And again, I go back to the project that David and I worked on. It was, we were able to look at the whole ecosystem and say, well, if somebody joins the brand at this point in time, we want them to be able to get a consistent message here and get it here and there and the same voice and tone in all touch points. And the only way we could do that was to look at the whole ecosystem and then do it internally as well. Meaning we had to get out the design team, the developers, the UX, everybody had to be on the same page in order to make that go smoothly.
Which is when I mentioned brand storytelling and human-centered user experience, they really go hand in hand, and you kind of see that exemplified in this illustration here from MailChimp.
So what is brand purpose? Every brand makes a promise, but a defining purpose is what separates them from their competitors. I mean, there's a functional purpose,
Make money. The functional purpose is make money.
Yes, right, exactly, right. Keeps the lights on. Yeah.
Yes, make money.
An intentional purpose, to do good in the world. And I think that's even more important now,
Sure.
as opposed to it was a few years ago, whereas, a brand could just kind of go out there and do business and, and say, well, I don't necessarily, I don't think it's important for you to know where I stand in the world or I don't need to go into what I believe in. But now we're finding that not only do brands have to take a stand, consumers are demanding to know, they want to know where you stand. They want to know, and consumers are gravitating to, don't get me wrong, there are still some brands out there who just kind of, live up on their pedestal, but the ones who go out there and say, this is who we are and this is what we believe in are the ones who have more loyal customers and the ones who have more people who, they bring in more loyal customers who become brand advocates who then go out and do the heavy lifting for you, as opposed to, you just relying on your advertising and marketing dollars.
Yeah, and that's that oxytocin release too. So brand purpose truly activates that oxytocin, that emotional connection that keeps folks in your funnel.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And it's making your dollars go a lot further, right?
Yeah, they're working twice as hard for you. And your dollars are really working really smart, that whatever you're spending, you're getting sometimes 2 or 3 fold out of it when you leverage that brand purpose.
Yep. I mean, and here's some, 3 strong examples. I talked a little bit about, Nike earlier. I mean, their purpose is to motivate every athlete in the world. We believe if you have a body, you can be an athlete, and they continue to put out messages that are, that support that. Now, granted, they do have a very good product. They are, very well known for listening to their audience and designing products that are, not only look good, but they function well. So that serves the functional purpose of it. But when you add that intentional purpose on top of it, then it makes Nike almost untouchable. And the same thing for the Always company. It's like they could have just continued to sell their product, just business as usual. But when they came out with the Like a Girl campaign and what it means to be a girl, it just really just kind of changed the landscape, because it's just so powerful. Because when we think about that expression, like a girl, I mean, what does it mean to throw like a girl? And then you have these people who are who have power beyond belief and just kind of shatters that stereotype. It shows that they have a very strong brand purpose.
Yeah, and their product is really a low visibility, in a low visibility category, right? And so the product itself is like low visibility, like bathroom paper. It's a low visibility category, kind of in the shadows. And so they found a place within the ecosystem to come out of those shadows and have a larger purpose within a cultural zeitgeist. And so I thought that was also pretty extraordinary as well.
And the same thing with with Dove. I mean, the campaign they did where they had the sketch artists come in and have people describe different types of women, and the artists were the sketch artist who was like a forensic expert who generally works for police sketch artists, and the results that he came up with was amazing. If you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend you checking it out. But But the purpose of it was challenging society's definition of beauty. And you just kind of look at the thumbnail that we pulled here. It's that, it comes in all sizes, shapes, and colors. Again, they could have just continued just to be a company that provided soap products and just said, hey, use our product, it gets your face clean or gets your body clean. But they went beyond that, and it's done well for them.
Yeah, so in these examples, really none of these top performing brands are really talking about features and benefits. They really aren't giving us an overabundance of facts. They're really encapsulating their brand into a story that matters the most to their users. And so that's really kind of the key, the essence of what brand storytelling is to, not be real salesy and not pitch in every opportunity, but to tell a story that really resonates with the audience. Then they're going to be more susceptible to your pitch. I hate to say it that way, but that's the ad guy in me coming out. A little psychological manipulation there. I hate to put it that way, but it is kind of what it is.
Yeah, I'll jump in with one thing. And
Sure.
you were talking about the thoroughness of brand voice, and being a brand guy by background, I understand what you're talking about. One of my favorite examples I ever saw was on Virgin Airlines, that in first class in the bottom, and Virgin has kind of a quirky, cheeky, it's British, right? I'll call it a cheeky tone of voice.
Cheeky, sure.
Then on the bottom of the salt and pepper shakers, if somebody were to steal the salt and pepper, the little physical ones out of first class, on the bottom they etched "pinched from Virgin Atlantic Airlines." I just thought it was perfectly aligned with their tone and their brand voice. Those little things really do matter.
Good stuff. Yes, you nailed it. That's it, Dan. That's
They're brilliant at that. They carry it through all the way through. Yes, from top to bottom. Yep.
I think a lot of that, and I think it starts with the CEO, right? Sir Richard Branson, right? I think it all kind of, he's kind of a cheeky guy, and I think it all kind of, the brand embodies that. So yeah, totally. And being consistent with that voice, having the discipline to, raise the pitch lower or higher given the situation, but really staying consistent with that voice, right? A video for content strategy.
Yeah, so a good buddy of mine, a guy by the name of JoJo Brim, he's one of the greatest hip hop, R&B, A&R guys, A&R directors in history, right? So Atlantic Records, Def Jam Records. He's currently at Arista heading up A&R, right? He's worked with some of the greatest acts of the last 20 years. And it was a great benefit to be able to spend time with JoJo over the years and really kind of learn, how he goes about creating and curating and cataloging content for various artists. And it's really, from his perspective, it's really kind of all about getting into the core of that artist and then creating content based upon that where they have authority to make content. So how do we go about doing that at Fulton Mecklenburg? Basically, we do a content audit. We audit all of your content that's currently in the marketplace, and we also audit some of your competitors. We consider various touch points like CRM, mobile, search, video, gaming, social, AR, VR, wherever you've got content, we want to audit it for you to see how it's performing. And then based upon how your content's performing, how your competitors' content's performing, we find white space for you where you have the authority to create more content pillars and to draw more folks into your experiences. Because without great content, your experiences are really gonna lag. After we've extrapolated some insights out of that audit, we create a playbook, your content strategy, in our content lab called the Mix Down. And then once we've got that strategy in place, we start creating all kind of content for you. Long form video, short form video, social content, GIFs, memes, gamification, infographics, display advertising, all the above. So Fulton Mecklenburg, we're gonna create, curate, and help you catalog great content. Hit us up online, hit us up in social at fullmec.com. Fulton Mecklenburg, move the crowd. Yes, sir.
So that's kind of our content offering. We are a data-centric shop, so we can help you with all the analytics pieces, help you again extrapolate insights out of your data. So whatever your data stack looks like, we're pretty platform agnostic in that regard, as far as going in, pulling insights out. And you should be as well. So what we're going to show you today is a sort of data platform agnostic approach to creating a content POV. So whatever your data platform is, whatever you're pulling from, and whatever your data infrastructure looks like, that's tracking customer experience in the journey, you still need a POV in place, a point of view in place, through which you can extrapolate actionable insights from the data. Data in and of itself is like iron ore that you pull out of a mountain. I mean, it has to be refined in order for it to be used and be applied. And data is the same way. And so what we're going to really kind of lay out here is this POV, this point of view that will really help you optimize your approach to content. So the overarching idea is to become a brand publisher. Most folks start off at the lift and shift position, where they just move assets from one channel to another. They create assets, they'll pop it up on the gram, they'll tweet it. It might become part of a display advertising campaign. It might become part of an email drip campaign. It might be part of your pitch deck. And so what you're doing at that phase is you're really just kind of lifting and shifting assets from one channel to another. And that's going to have its limitations because each channel has different rules of the road. And there may need to be some alterations made, some adjustments made in content that you're deploying on each channel. The second phase is that you build based upon existing assets. You try to retrofit a strategy to match what you have on hand, or that is what's easily produced. Say you're using Canvas or something to create GIFs or memes or whatever. You'll just plug and play what's in your deck into those campaigns. And that's sort of at the second level. You're getting a little bit better than lifting and shifting, but not necessarily where you're going to be able to optimize the most engagement. Third level is developing custom content. You're getting pretty far along now because you're creating, curating, and collaborating on purpose, brand purpose. And that's going to move the brand ahead when you're creating custom content for each channel. And then, of course, the holy grail is the commitment to becoming a content publisher. And then generally, these type of brands transcend the category and put them in a driver's seat. And then they're in a position to kind of redefine a category. So for startups, it might be even easier for startups to become content publishers because there isn't all the bureaucracy and all the layers that slow down velocity to content publishing. So because your organization's flat and lean, you may be able to move through these phases much more quickly than an established brand, say like Apple or Airbnb or Uber.
And one of the things too where we find that we've been able to help clients too is to get to that third level that develop custom content, being able to helping them plan for it, because a lot of times you can say, oh, I've got $500,000 or even have $100,000, whatever the amount is, and then I'm going to put all of my eggs in this one basket and create this one piece of content. That's one of the things we've been able to do, is to help the brands and clients understand, okay, this is how you get more pieces of content out of, what the amount of dollars you have, as opposed to the thing of kind of just throwing it all in one. And then you end up getting back to that lift and shift. Well, I paid X amount of dollars for it, so I just want to, I got to put it everywhere, right? As opposed to saying I can divide my dollars and I can hit more touch points. And as David was saying, making sure that, I'm not just lifting something and dropping it on Facebook and Instagram or whatever the latest thing is, because those platforms all have their own unique demands, and they have the unique characteristics that make them work, that make them work on those platforms.
You don't want to take your cat meme and try to make it work on TikTok
Right.
or Twitter, for instance. So lifting and sifting can be painful for a brand.
Yes.
So the content audit. So for me, this is where really the rubber kind of hits the road on really creating a content strategy. And again, this POV, this point of view, is data platform agnostic. Again, you kind of have to have your own internal gut check POV in place so that you can extrapolate actionable insights out of data. Data is Greg bought 4 shirts on J. Crew on Tuesday at this time, and he spent this much. That's data. We want to be able to look at that data and figure out what are some insights we can pull out of that data to make Greg's experience with us less frictionless in the future. And then also try to aggregate some of those data profiles into insights so that we can speak to our audiences collectively while at the same time driving personalization. So this POV works with any of those platforms that are going to help you, whether it's Adobe or Salesforce, or you've got your own UiPath algorithm in place, or you went out and paid a guy to create a machine learning algorithm in Python and R, whatever the case may be, you still need a POV in place to extrapolate insights out of that data. And it starts with the content audit. And the key to the content audit, if you look at the Venn diagram on your right, you're really trying to find the white space. That's really what we're looking for. So if we look at this Venn diagram, up at the top is what your users want. And so again, being user-centered from an experience perspective, and then also from a brand storytelling perspective, making sure that the user's right in the middle as well. The user's the hero of the story. So we want to get an understanding about what folks want. We also want to understand where the competitive threat is coming from as well. And we want to know what our strengths and weaknesses are as well. Now, where these 3 bubbles overlap becomes the battle royal. We want to operate in this area here of business strength. That's going to give us the greatest opportunity to acquire folks into our funnel. It's also going to give us the greatest opportunity to drive loyalty and retain folks within our funnel. It's also going to give us the greatest opportunity to drive advocacy for folks that are within our funnel that we've driven loyalty with through rewards. So this is an area of strength for us because it overlaps where we're strong with our content and what folks want. So that's the area we're trying to find within the white space. We really kind of want to steer away from where our competitors are strong and where we're weak and what folks want. That's a business threat to us. I mean, we might send some reconnaissance content over there, but it's not an area where we're going to generate a bunch of demand. So a good content audit really helps you to see what people want, where you're strong and weak, and where your competitors are strong and weak. And then you want to create demand in that area where you're strong and where customers want to play. So the content audit allows you to be very laser approached. It really enables this laser approach as opposed to carpet bombing an area. It's really smart bombs. You're really, hitting those key assets that you need to get a beachhead within that battle royal. And I'm using war metaphors because that's really kind of what it is. You're really going out there, fighting not only against competitors head to head and some not head to head, but also against cluttered schedules and cluttered brain space for your users. So there's a lot of battling going out there. That's why we call it the battle royal, but that's kind of where it has to go down in that white space. Your audit really enables that visibility. It helps you to identify your strengths, neutralize threats, and identify opportunities to satisfy previously unmet wants and needs of your target audience. And so it allows you to kind of get in there. Out of that audit, hopefully you'll then create this omni-channel content strategy, which is really your blueprint. And it'll clearly spell out which relevant stories and conversations your brand should engage in, and also what your ecosystem might look like for each audience segment. So now you're really kind of getting into that third tier. I think that this the content audit really kind of leapfrogs you from lifting and shifting into that custom content design phase, because now you're armed with all these actionable insights that will empower you to go out into the market and execute a laser-like approach.
And
That looks like you have something you want to add there.
well, yeah, also too, and that will help you be able to respond in real time. And then you can use your technology to help, you know, David mentioned like personalization and dynamic creative optimization. You know, whatever tool you use, whatever platform you decide to choose, you can, you know, after you've done this content audit, you can then respond, right? Because, you know, as the example he used, I may go out and buy, you know, 3 shirts or however many shirts. But then maybe I left something else in my cart, or maybe there was something else that I was looking at, or I can then respond in real time. I can send you an email saying, hey, you know, how did you like those shirts? Or send us, or here's a coupon for more shirts. And those are just examples. But once you have that content audit, once you have your POV, once you know what your game plan is, then you can respond in real time, as opposed to just having to wait another 3 months to be able to adjust your messaging or to come out with a new piece of content. You know, you can leverage all this to respond more in real time.
Oh, great point. That's a great point. Yeah, it really gives you the visibility. And the beautiful thing about it is that these content audits really allow you to customize your approach. I mean, it is not a one size fits all when it comes to content strategy. It is really based upon your brand tone and voice, the strengths and weaknesses of your market or your offering, depending on where you are in your product cycle. It really allows you to mitigate some of those risk factors to the brand while, you know, really kind of judging up, right, where you're strong, right, which is kind of what we want to do when we're going to market. Because again, no product or no experience is perfect, right? That's why we kind of take this agile sort of lean approach to developing products.
Yep.
So the content ecosystem. So we teach our clients that there are 3 really types of content that you can create, and then of course there's a multiplicity of formats you can use, as we talked about in the video: long form, short form, white papers. But there are basically 3 types of content. Now, we didn't invent this. I'm going to be honest. I had an opportunity to spend some time at the YouTube studios in London a few years back. And so the good folks at YouTube, you know, not only shared with me, but I've come to find out that Uber and Apple and a lot of your favorite brands leverage this approach. It's seen as the best of breed approach currently. So we call it superhero content, storytelling content, and scheduled content. Superhero content is large scale marquee content that has mass appeal, even outside your target. This is where you go big. It's promoted across all channels. It substantially extends and expands your reach and impact in special moments when you can afford to go big. So that's superhero content. You see T'Challa, the Black Panther there for that icon. Then there's storytelling content. This is your bread and butter. Storytelling content is your bread and butter. It's targeted, I like to say quasi-episodic, right? Doesn't have to be on a super tight episodic cadence like once a week or once every 2 weeks. You can figure out like your own cadence, kind of like Birchbox. I don't know if you guys know Birchbox. Well, my wife orders stuff from them all the time. And it's like lipsticks and exfoliators and, you know, and each month they come out with a new box. And so each month she gets excited. Her and my teen daughter, they kind of get excited about the new Birchbox that's coming out. And then there's a video around it, and there's gamification and leaderboards on did you have this, how did it work? There's a whole community around it. And so it's quasi-episodic. They go dark at some months. I forget exactly when, but some months they go dark. Then they come back really big with a big piece of superhero content that may feature someone like Rihanna or Taylor Swift when they're really kind of going big. But the storytelling content really kind of keeps folks engaged. It is the intersection of what a brand has to say and what customers want to hear, which kind of goes back to that slide before. It has a regular schedule. There's an editorial calendar in place that drives repeat engagement. It can be long or short arc, but it'll always have a beginning and an end. And yeah, so with this episodic content, you always want to be a little more sitcom than drama, right? You know, you always want to be a little more, I'm going to date myself a little bit here, King of Queens, than, Godfather of Harlem. So you're always wanting to lean a little bit more towards the sitcom side when it comes to your storytelling content. And then the scheduled content, I call this kind of like the hygiene content that really keeps your media ecosystem flowing. It's really born out of non-branded, category-specific keywords and performance data. And this type of content really kind of boosts the discoverability of your brand. So this is kind of where your white papers play a little bit, things of that nature. Infographics, they kind of play in this space.
Blog posts.
Those are great scheduled pieces of content that keep, again, hygienic content, like you're supposed to shower and brush your teeth, pretty regularly. Yeah, but it boosts the discoverability of your brand. So within the content ecosystem, you've got superhero storytelling and scheduled content. And this is sort of the calculus of it on this slide. 10% superhero, 35% storytelling, and 55% scheduled. So this is kind of how it breaks down on how much of your time and budget should be dedicated to each types of content. Superhero, very few, 3 to 4 times a year. Storytelling is weekly or bi-weekly, ideally. Although some folks have a built-in audience and they can do it monthly. And then, of course, schedule content is daily. You're really kind of looking for those blog posts, infographics, and white papers to really kind of drive, and email drip campaigns too, to really kind of drive some of that discoverability around your brand. So what the content ecosystem looks like, again, this is a tried and tested model: owned, earned, and paid. You generally seed the content ecosystem with some paid content, whether that's just a few posts on Facebook or the Gram or Twitter that are sponsored, that are going to drive some engagement and expand your reach. And then that content should be driving back to an owned platform, like into an email list, or directly to a landing page on your site, or directly into your native experience. The paid content, the sponsored content, as you see by the ecosystem, should also generate some earned content, some earned engagement, not paid for, which is where users themselves become the channel, and they begin to share and retweet and repost and comment, and then the users themselves become the channel for you. And so that's when you're in the advocacy phase. And then, of course, that earned content is also driving traffic back to your owned channels. Again, whether it's a list where you can continue to engage with them, or directly to a landing page, or into your native experience. And so when you think about content, it starts with that audit, then drives down into where your playbook, drives down into the playbook. And then from the playbook, it really kind of shows you exactly where your white space is. And then you start figuring out what your mix of superhero, storytelling, and scheduled content is going to be. And then how you're going to execute within your paid, owned, and earned channels to really drive meaningful traffic. Really, ultimately, we're really trying to drive meaningful traffic back into your owned channels to get folks to subscribe or opt into a list, and to convert them, and then have them become, part of the family. So Greg, if that's all I got, anything that you wanted to add there, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the important thing is, if you look at this, all the things that we've talked about today, and you put it up against where you are right now, this is something that, you can build to, or you can also say, well, okay, what does superhero content mean for me at this stage, right? When we say superhero content, we're not necessarily talking about, a Super Bowl spot, right?
Mm.
That is that for like an Apple or some other things. But in your world, that you still could create superhero content. It's just that, what's the right size and what it is.
Yeah, the scale.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So look at our whole presentation for today and say, how can I scale this for my business and what's right for me so that, I can set myself up for success in the content space.
So I'm going to stop share here and see if you guys have any comments or questions. And
Hey, this is Jacob. I have a question for you.
awesome. Hey,
So
Jacob.
when it comes to content, like for your websites and things like that, who would you go to if you needed to, like we could use somebody from the outside in to listen to our story, explain the products and help us craft the messaging for, the products and the services we're offering. So where would you go to get that if you didn't have it on your team?
That's a great question. Well, we're not supposed to sell directly in these sessions, Jacob.
I'm asking. It's okay with Dan and Caitlin. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, so
generally.
yeah, I mean, that would be like a perfect engagement for us to work with you, to consult with you, and gut check what you guys are currently doing, and then make some recommendations, and then hopefully, get into a relationship where we could either show you how to do it or execute it for you. So we'd love to, jump on a call with you and kind of figure out what you're doing.
Cool. Thank you.
Hi, David. I have a quick question. So at what stage in a company you guys suggest that this kind of marketing becomes crucial or critical?
Greg and I might have different views on that one. Hey, Greg, did you hear us it?
Yeah. I mean, I would say you could start as soon as possible.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, you just scale it to what, to meet your individual needs. I mean, you just, the main thing is that you always want to be able to tell stories and get your content out there, and as David was going over in that last slide, is that there's a way to make it all work together so that you are not just, reinventing the wheel at with every piece of content, and that you are successfully driving the same message over and over again. You're maximizing every piece of content. And, I know that Gary Vee, and I know some people don't like him and he can be polarizing, but he's very good at talking about how to take one piece of content and how to repurpose it and get it out in a lot of different avenues. But David, go ahead and I'll let you share.
Yeah, it depends on what your business goals are right now, Sid. I mean, so are you mostly in trying to get capital, or are you trying to get folks in your funnel, or both? Where are you?
Yeah, both. So my question is around, let's say it's kind of weighing your options, fine. Like we have seen companies who just go full blast on marketing and advertisement with whatever might they have, and it's slash and burn situations sometimes, fine. We only see those who succeed.
So this model is not a slash and burn approach. This is an extremely strategic approach.
Right.
And
that's what I wanted to hear. Yeah.
You can get in this approach at any budget level, as Greg just kind of pointed out. But this is not a throw it up against the wall and hope it works. No, this is more of a, I hate to use the word scientific, but certainly a data-driven approach.
Okay.
And a very strategic approach. And if you're trying to get VC and also attract folks into the funnel, there are some pretty low cost, I would say, ways to create some pretty compelling content and stories to do that. Whereas some of the stuff is targeting VC guys, you're punching all the right dopamine and oxytocin buttons on those guys, and then as well creating content to get folks into your funnel at the same time. And that can be done pretty cost effectively and pretty strategically, as we were talking about, through the lens of that content audit. So more of a slash and burn approach is, hey, I've got 100 grand, I've got 50 grand, 25 grand, make some videos, pop them up on YouTube, drive some traffic to those videos, and then hope something happens. Now, this is the opposite of that. I would suggest spending a little bit more time really learning what the voice and tone of your brand is, and then deploying that voice and tone around very specific touch points within your media ecosystem, if that makes any sense.
Get it. Thanks, David.
Hey, David, this is David Brooks. I have a question for you.
Hey, David.
Hey, great presentation. Before I ask the question, I wonder if you guys have seen the movie Art and Copy.
I have. Yes.
Winston-Salem, I think, screenwriter, or one of the folks on staff wrote they showed it at the Winston-Salem Film Festival, I don't know, 10 years ago. I was just curious if you'd seen it. It's a great film.
Yeah, it is. It's very good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's on Netflix. If anybody's interested in the history of branding, just a great watch. But I have a question around voice and tone. So, we're selling into the banking software space, and how do you think about striking a balance between wanting to take a wrecking ball to the industry you're selling to?
Yeah, so satire is probably the tone. So if you're looking to smash people in the head, you don't want them to think you're smashing them in the head necessarily. You want them to kind of giggle at themselves. So you want to be a little cheeky there, probably from a tone perspective. I think though your voice, since you are in a highly regulated and a lot of compliance is in your space, right? Yeah. So your voice is going to have to be pretty consistent there. So you're going to have a level of, for lack of a better words, there's going to have to be a level of seriousness in the voice, kind of what the brand is because of the compliance issues. I mean, so you can't come in like Vans, for instance, right? So you can't have a voice like Vans in that industry, just kind of wouldn't work. But you could be cheeky. And if you're looking to disrupt, major disruption, wrecking ball is major disruption to the status quo, right? Satire works really well there from a tonality perspective. And I think animation will help there too, because that'll help lighten the punch a little bit too, as far as formatting is concerned. So yeah, I try to strike that. I see Greg getting up on his seat. He's probably Greg and I disagree all the time, by the way.
No, I'm agreeing with. I just wanted to add to that the other thing you might want to look at is be careful in terms of who the target is, because with especially like with humor and being irreverent, that you can make the target your competitors, and then probably there's some brands who've done that well, or you can make the target, you make a little bit more self-effacing, making the target on you, or you can make the target just the industry in general. So it's just striking the right balance based on how you set it up and who's the target that you're going after.
Yeah, we'd love to jump on a call with you, David.
Cool. Sounds good, guys. Let's do it.
Cool.
Sweet. Anyone else? It looks like we're running up on time here. It's great stuff from David, the Sid, and Jacob. Any other comments or questions?
I mean, I can keep pounding here.
What else
So maybe the target is the regulator, right? Like somebody that everyone hates, who isn't going to have a consistent, figurehead or agent of retaliation, right? Like
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a defenseless villain, that's perfect. You can turn him.
Fortunes have been made off of that.
Yeah, you can turn him into Saddam in the foxhole. I mean, that's perfect.
But I mean, no, we laugh. But the thing there is that there's that commonality. There's that insight, that shared thing that everybody feels that. And I worked in pharma for years, and I remember sitting through, medical legal reviews and just, like wanting to pull my hair out. But there's taking on that common enemy is something that a lot of people can relate to and share have lots of pain points. I think would be a good start. That's just yeah.
Have you guys seen any good spots taking on COVID as the enemy? Like I've seen a lot of. I think there was one mashup of just how all the ads look the same, just about how sad we all are and how nostalgic we all are. But have you seen anything where COVID is an enemy,
Great.
a defenseless enemy that we can use satire with? I don't know if that really works here.
So you got to be really careful with things like COVID. I mean, you gotta tread lightly there, because that could be a landmine. Because it's kind of touchy. So you want to be careful with that.
Right.
It could be done, but I have a lot of trepidation around that.
I mean, isn't it odd that we would even talk about that in the context of those of us who lived through 9/11? We lost, what, 3,500 people on 9/11? And here we're losing 2,500 a day. And
Yeah, it's different. It's certainly different.
yeah.
Bigger.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Jacob Medagingo again.
Hey, Jacob.
So if we're done with that topic, I don't want to jump before we're ready.
Well, I'm not done with it, but you can jump in, Jacob.
So because we have a complex product, so we have a platform, and then we try to sell the platform or communicate to investors, really, they want to understand the application of our platform. And so we've been, switching to have a brand to brands. So we have Agingo, which is the overall brand, is the software company that builds the software. And we have two products, one called Eureka One and one called Noob, the platform itself. And we think it helps to communicate what we're doing better, because each of the brands is focused on something specific that we're doing. So the very clear, easy to understand message with Eureka, monetize your data. Whereas Noob, not only on blockchain, that's a platform that we sell to enterprises. How do you guys feel about brand to brands and tech companies and how that works out?
Greg, you want to tackle that one?
Well, I mean, I think the approach is, whether you're going brand to brand or brand to consumer or B2B, I think the approach is still the same in terms of that. And I mentioned, pharma earlier, and there was this, at one point, there was this big thing of, but we're talking to doctors. And, we came to the realization that doctors are human too. So this thing that we're talking about brand storytelling, and we found that it works for human to human conversations, whether it's for in the field that you're in. It doesn't matter the vertical. I think it doesn't even matter, whether you're trying to convince another business or an individual. You can still put it through that lens of saying, hey, what is the main message I want to get across? What do I stand for? And how do I think you even mentioned this earlier, is the simplification of it. That's the thing you want to do, is you want to make it, easy to get, easy to understand, and easy to respond to.
Yeah, I want to add to that. Great stuff, Greg. Yeah, Jacob, there's a ton of stuff on the interweb and the Googler about the consumerization of B2B advertising. So over the last 5-7 years or so, we've seen messaging approaches and branding approaches in B2B spaces, brand to brand spaces, that are eerily similar to the way folks approach B2C demos. And so to Greg's point, who are you really talking to? You're talking to a human whose neurochemicals can still be manipulated through the pushing the buttons of dopamine and oxytocin. And so you just have to find what those characters are, what that setting is for brand to brand. Who are the characters and the settings in brand to brand? And then manipulating dopamine and oxytocin within the form of storytelling. And of course, you're in the data business with Eureka. The data visualization is a big deal right now. When you think about companies like Tableau and Power BI, they're all about using data to tell stories with, right? Within an enterprise environment. So again, it kind of comes back to Greg's point. You're really humans. Oh wow, I got a really corny, illustrative case study here. My wife and I watch a lot of rom-coms, and we were recently watching Notting Hill from the 90s with Hugh Grant and Julia Roberts. she's this big movie star, and he's this regular British guy that works in a bookstore, and their relationship is doomed from the beginning. And she makes this great line. She says, "Hey, I'm just a girl and you're just a guy, and we just want to have a relationship." And so it's kind of like that in B2B. You're just a guy, he's just a guy, and if you can find those dopamine and oxytocin points, you can drive what I call hyper relevancy. You might want to write that one down. That's the key. Hyper relevancy prior to credibility. Unfortunately, most B2B guys, they're looking to drive credibility, features, and benefits first before they've created hyper relevancy for that buyer, which again comes back to manipulating dopamine and oxytocin. Make sense, Jacob?
It does. What was challenging for us, because we're a blockchain-based company,
Sure.
we're eliminating third parties. So we're providing technology to consumers. There's a benefit for businesses. They're the ones who pay. And so it's two sides of this marketplace that no longer needs a third party like Google or Facebook to sit in the middle.
Right.
So I think that's why we've had some, because we were just selling ourselves as a tech company, centralizing the data and having control of it, we'd be selling. But in our case, we're actually creating that story for the customer. They're the ones selling their data.
Well, so then so now you're talking community, right? So the blockchain users are essentially a community. And so there's an approach for that too. So that's even easier because now you're talking about a collective. Now you're talking about getting folks lined up on the same idea. Now you're talking about mass dopamine and oxytocin manipulation, which is what happens when you go to a concert, for instance, or a ball game, or an opening at the Met, or whatever the case may be. So there's still an approach there, is what I'm saying. So no, you don't have the benefit of leveraging a third party like a Facebook or a Google, but you can create that, is what I'm saying, within the community of your blockchain users.
Gotcha. That's helpful. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Cool. Hey, I don't want to be giving all of it away, okay, guys? So stop with the hard questions. Give me a couple of layups. No, this is great stuff, you guys. I really appreciate the engagement.
I missed it earlier in case you talked about it, but we read a really good book that your slides reminded me of called Brand Story. The Brand Story. Have you guys read that book?
I actually have not read that book.
Oh yeah, it's really good. It talks about storytelling in your brand, making the customer the hero. So in our case, we want to make the businesses the hero by giving their customers control of their data and a way to monetize it.
I will pick that one up. One that I read a lot and I go back to is The Power of Myth by Joseph Campbell.
Yeah.
And
Parts of Darkness as well. Yep. Yeah,
just a master storyteller. And of course, a Story by Robert McKee.
Yes.
This one here, I go to this one quite a bit. And so it's really those two that I really kind of have built in my understanding of, but I certainly will pick up Brand Story. That sounds really good.
And Robert McKee also does a workshop that is just focused on brand story. I mean, he's legendary as far as teaching screenwriting.
Yeah.
But he also does workshops. In fact, he came through Atlanta not long ago doing one that's just focused on, how you tell your brand story. And I think there was even a section in there about how to put together presentation decks using story elements, which is, and there's a lot of stuff out there, online about that. And that's something I highly would recommend to the group, is to look at ways that you can bring in storytelling elements in your presentation decks, because that's something that you'll be doing a lot of in terms of, raising capital. And it's not always just about the, paid media or going out to the social media channels and so forth. But, each time you create a presentation deck that you're going to try to use to either, raise money or to, to bring more people on board or partners or whatever, I would recommend using these storytelling elements of a beginning, middle, and an end, some type of conflict or resolution, and giving people a reason to want to act.
Beautiful. Yeah, certainly in your pitch decks, something I saw at Alpha Labs, and I saw some compelling decks and some compelling companies during Alpha Labs. But I would have liked to have seen maybe some motion graphics do some of the heavy lifting
around demoing features and benefits as opposed to just hearing about features and benefits. If there was some motion graphics or some inexpensive animation that was doing that heavy lifting, because again, after about the third pitch, now I'm thinking about the VC guy who's sitting in his office hearing pitches all day, and you know how it has to just tone him out, how it has to just kind of tone out after a while. And one of the keys is to kind of, you know, create that differentiation where someone will want to become an active listener. And so to Greg's point, you know, letting you know, different types of content do that heavy lifting for you in your decks, I think is an easy sort of base hit for you.
Yes.
You know, motion graphics, you know, animation, short video. It does all that heavy lifting for you. I mean, and it tells that story, kind of similar to the way that we kind of told the story about Grandmaster Flash and DJ Hollywood and all those guys when we were trying to start our company. We were looking for a spark of inspiration, and we went back to some of our earliest roots and used that to kind of spark our story, and then allowed that to do the heavy lifting.
And Jacob, you had asked earlier about, you know, kind of, I think your question was around like, where do I start? And, you know, if you only have $2 in your pocket, I would say if you could use $1, you know, to hire a writer, and preferably a writer who could do other things as well. But start with a writer who can help you craft the story first, you know, and then just kind of build upon it there. Because, you know, both David and I have writing experience, but aside from, you know, what we have to offer, I think if you find someone who can help you tell that story first, you know, and then start crafting it and, you know, bringing in some type of visuals and, you know, and then start building the house. I think
I'm gonna nuance that, Greg.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. So yeah, if you go for a writer, not like an art school guy though.
No.
Okay, so I want to nuance that. Just
A marketing,
little bit.
right? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, not an art school guy.
Yeah, we did this. We hired a TV guy, a movie director.
Well, that's pretty good. Depending
and-
on how they know about content, that could work pretty well.
Yeah, we hired them to do these videos, and unfortunately, it was like early. They're still relevant to what we're doing, but it was just a tad bit early because we pivoted, and then, you know, we made that investment. So we're just not going out and doing it again because we want to make sure that this is the message that's going to resonate fully with people.
Yeah.
And then we'll go back out and redo it. But it's pretty much the same message, and it's about giving people control. That's what people want to hear.
That's where that content publishing thing kind of comes into play. So when you pivot, you know, sometimes videos are harder to shoot, but if you've got, I don't know, a good tablet. I mean, it doesn't have to be Martin Scorsese or Spike Lee level stuff, you know. You know, it can be, you know, kind of viral looking and kind of guerrilla looking, and that could be part of the story as well. So everything doesn't have to be super polished. You can also, with your content, the same way with your product development, you can take an MVP approach.
Yes.
To your content.
Yep.
Everything doesn't have to be super slick and polished. You can certainly take that agile sort of MVP approach where you're getting something working and you're not having to live off of old stale content that isn't relevant now, but you're continuing to expand on that story. So I would implore you all to take an MVP approach to your content.
And you know, I'm sure you guys know this already, but like your Netflixes and your Googles and your Facebooks of the world, one of the things that, you know, one of the reasons why they've been able to be so successful is that they get things to market quickly. You know, they don't make sure it's completely perfect. They'll get it out there, they'll test it, then they'll bring it back and adjust it, and then get it back out there again. And I think a lot of times too, there's, especially like when it comes to video, and you know, and Dave and I've seen this a lot too, is that a lot of times, you know, video becomes this thing where, you know, oh, I want to make it look the best it can possibly be, and you know, and some guy comes along with a suitcase full of wares, you know, and sells you, you know, oh, well, you need this, and it's got to be this, it's got to be 4K, it's got to be this, and next thing you know, you spend all this money. And then, and Jacob, to your point, it's like, oh, well, wait a minute, you know, I have this new information, I need to make an adjustment. And, now I got to go back to this guy who sold me all this big bill of goods, and, it's going to cost me another, grip to change a comma, or, or to be able to adjust. So my main point is being able to kind of piggyback off what David was saying, that it's just that MVP approach, and then also being able to, get messaging and get things out to your audience or to wherever it needs to go, and to have it so that you can adjust it quickly or move on to the next thing without losing the farm.
Yeah, which is why I think multiple content formats are important.
Yes.
So if you got a video guide, that could be your superhero content. And it doesn't necessarily have to be about features or benefits or pivots. Smaller pieces of content, like as I mentioned, motion graphics, which are much cheaper to produce. And of course, there are animation suites out there like Animate This that anyone can use. They're very DIY-able. And those could be content formats that could allow you to vocalize some pivots, right? So the idea is to remain as nimble as you can with your content, the same way you do as you're optimizing your product experiences. And so again, that the way you're approaching your brand storytelling and your content has to be this nimble, agile, lean approach, the same way you approach building out your products. Well, it's been a great exchange, guys. You guys are a very engaged group.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Yes.
Thank you guys for showing up today. I don't know if Caitlin wants to put a bow on it.
No, I wanted to thank both of you guys for taking the time to speak with with our founders. This is definitely an important topic, especially now. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to speak with them.
Our pleasure.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
If you guys have any questions, please reach out to Caitlin or me or Greg, and we'd be happy to continue the discussion.
Thanks, David.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.